Thank you, everyone, for your patience. This is Web3 Wednesday with Consensus, our monthly series where we invite interesting people from the industry. And for the last 2 months, we've been doing also an AI takeover. So we've invited some speakers from the AI world, not as much Web3 world, just to talk about how can you improve your productivity and how can you really leverage the AI tools in our day-to-day life. So today, Chris Colhurst will be talking about the ideas and ways that he uses AI and Microsoft uses AI for increased productivity. And I believe it will be quite interactive session, so I'm very excited for it, going through some use cases. But I'll let Chris take it over and introduce us. So thank you so much.
Hi, friends. How are you? My name's Chris Coltrust, and that was Clemens. I couldn't help the selfie flex. You wouldn't believe what I had to do to get this picture with Sam Altman. So I'm just returned from Azure. It's not Azure, but OpenAI Dev Days on Monday. So I'm fresh with new inspiration and use cases and tooling. So I just want to go through. Hopefully, I'll hit. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt or ask. My role is a data and AI cloud solution architect. So I work with all of the tooling. I'll talk to you about my experiences, my use cases, and I'll go through this presentation. Hopefully something will hit. Okay, so let's start. And also that's my LinkedIn. So if you want to be my LinkedIn friend. Maybe there's a delay. So one of the things we talk about is, or we think about, or I like to think about, is a human interaction with AI and the user experience. This is a project by Microsoft Research. If you're developing applications, thinking about applications, or developing AI strategy, please take a look at these design patterns. They're super interesting. A lot of work went into them, and it really is like a guideline about how Microsoft thinks about human AI interaction. There's some URLs there. I'll provide it after the chat, after the talk. Really, in the way it's changed my productivity is in development. We've gone from the syntax where we have precision, right? Your standard code that you write, you have your user interface, et cetera, and adding the semantic power of the language models, where what you have is the language models here are understanding your intent. Together, they're creating some magic, right? So you see this in your chat GPT, or if you use GitHub Copilot, all of those things, the ability of the applications now to understand what you're saying and help you execute those tasks is super powerful. So we're going to go through a little bit about how that works and how we develop it. Is that on track with what we want to talk about, Marta? Yeah. So one of the things I talk about with my customers when I develop the applications, and I encourage you to think about, is what is your objective function? Machine learning objective function is what we're trying to optimize, like the objective of our optimization, right? So in that language, what I share with our customers, and I typically deal with financial services, is what we've been trying to do, I think, for the beginning of time with computers, is accelerate the decision velocity to real time, right? So we see these design patterns of using real-time data, language models, all of those things to get that decision velocity to real time, whether you're trying to book a vacation or you're an asset manager trying to decide signals and get buy-sell signals on what you should buy and put into your portfolio. It's really the same. And what we need to do there, and pretty much across the board in all the use cases, what do we need to get there is these things. Data governance, which I do a lot of work on, pipelines quality, process and monitoring, which we're going to talk about. Business alignment is super important, whether you're a startup or an enterprise. Having alignment across the board, right, with all of your stakeholders from legal to compliance to development is super important. And that is like, what is this product going to do? Right? What are the acceptable uses of the product internally? How are our customers going to use it, et cetera? All of those things, you need to really have that in place to have a successful project, right? Otherwise, you're creating a cool prototype and you're probably not going to go to production. Upskilling, which is what we're doing now, and I do a lot of this, really talking about the design patterns of how to think about AI strategy if we're talking to the C-level folks. And then really back to one of the original slides, talking to or upskilling the developers, like how do you use this new superpower responsibly in your applications, right? And then at the bottom, I put intentionally the AI and large language models. So, and I put that intentionally at the bottom as what we need to get there, is because the language models, AI has been around for a while, but the language models have come along and really created this forcing function to force us to get in the enterprises to get their data governance pipelines, data quality, process monitoring, all those things in good order. And really a lot of the work that we're doing is on the upper pieces, because the language models, as we may or may not know, are pre-trained, right? They sort of come out of the box smart. Um, and so in this picture, what I'm showing is the importance of the language models here, right? Well, they're super important, but the role that they play in the overall development of the applications and in the systems, right? So in terms of increasing the productivity, the language model is not your application. Really, the language model is the productivity driver, but the application around the outside and how you use it, right? Thinking about the data governance, security, resource management, search and retrieval, I spend a ton of time on, right? Because you'll hear about the RAG pattern, React patterns. What you need is you need to give the models the right context, right? For them to help you with the inference or getting the insights out of the data. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then we have prompts and tuning, process workflow, application integration, super important. All of these things, but we really see the language model is not your application, right? Is not your app. The language models is really the driver. So really, you need to think about all these other things and how you'll use them with language models to really boost your productivity. Yeah. So we'll just continue. So one of the products that we have from the application side, right, and from the application side for developing these things is our prompt flow product, which is here. We'll provide a link to it. But typically the process for this, right, is you have a design and development phase, this is where you have like all of your use cases, you figure out your use cases, and you build your prompts, modify your prompts, and debug and run and evaluate the flow. You have to think about the data access controls, the prompt engineering, the CI/CD, which is continuous integration and development, deploying this thing, iteratively experimenting with this, version and reproducibility. This is super important because I talk to customers all the time. I was talking to one last night, and they're like, well, we had version 1 of the GPT-4, version 3.14. The new version came out. If you watch the announcements, there's several new versions that are in the works right now being released by OpenAI, the GPT-4 Turbo, and all these things. We have fine tuning. We have all these models, right? So one of the things I'm sharing, if you're developing applications and even for productivity tools, you really need to stay on top of the latest advancements in tooling. And when you're developing, you need to develop your stack in such a way that you're planning to deprecate the models, right, and change the models and be able to have a stack that you can plug and play models, whether they're open source, OpenAI models, et cetera, very, very easily, right? And so when you do that, what you have is this step in the middle here, this evaluation and refinement, right? You really need to think about having a corpus of data, right? A data set you have, say, prompts and completions, like prompts that you have, and then you have an expected output, and be able to evaluate all of your use cases against whether you're developing a flow or an AI chatbot or a plugin or any of those things. When you develop one, be able to test it to make sure you have you're getting the expected output, and you can also measure and monitor the efficacy of whatever you've done. Say if you changed a prompt, or if you've improved your search, or you've changed a model, right? How do you make sure that these sort of stochastic models, right, basically models that can generate random output and hallucinations, are behaving the way you want? So this is the general workflow, and we have tooling that really does this, right? One of them is a prompt. We have 2 versions of prompt flow, and really the doing all this, right? The generative AI gives us an opportunity to make your applications truly intelligent, right? And hopefully that's like a real paradigm shift that we're seeing, and also in productivity, really rewiring your brain to be able to know how to leverage or really sort of learn how to leverage these new co-pilots and chat GPTs and machines that can write code for you and evaluate code, right? How do you trust but verify the code is correct? Like, how do you start building this into your workflow? And really, for me, it's about data. It's about evaluations and really just being able to adapt to this new paradigm. So in development, um, this sort of new section that's come in here, this AI orchestration section, is where I spend a lot of my time. And even if you're using, say, just the sort of out of the box copilots in ChatGPT, you'll start to find that like the models, if it's cute if you do like ChatGPT and you're chatting with the chatbot, but really you'll see the value is being able to orchestrate different models and also affordances, right? Affordances are things like when your AI chatbot can go talk to the internet or it can talk to an internal data source, et cetera. Orchestrating those models and that data together is really where the magic starts to come from and the productivity starts to come from, right? So I see these sort of folks talking about applications, and they're like, well, we want the application to automatically develop an investment memo, right? And then the investment memo gets sent. And I'm like, great, then what's the next step, right? Is someone on the other end going to get the investment memo and then read it with their AI, right? Is there a better way to do this? Like, is there a better way to communicate and increase the productivity, going back to first principles about how these applications will now interact? And we'll get into one of those patterns real quick. So anyway, the Copilot stack, really what it is your data, right? Whether it's your personal, your internal files, your internal enterprise data, or public data. The foundational models, which are all the GPTs, and then this sort of AI orchestration we spend a lot of time on. You'll hear about semantic kernel. You'll hear about LangChain, the Llama Index, all of those things. That's where the orchestration is. And the productivity in development is really knowing and learning how to properly use those orchestrators. You'll see this. OpenAI just announced their GPTs. They announced their assistants. And those are really orchestration and application layers over the foundational models, right? And one of the things I talk to my customers about is you need a but we need a plug-in strategy. Like, how are you going to position your product in this new era of AI, right? To drive, like, how, and back to the human AI interaction, like, how will your subject matter expertise integrate into GPTs to deliver your product, whether it's a data product or an advisory product, et cetera. And really, that's really the thinking about. We think a lot about the generative AI in products, right? Adopting generative AI through third-party applications. This would be Microsoft Copilots, GitHub Copilots, ChatGPT's application layer, their new AI assistants, et cetera. Right now, a lot of our customers are thinking about internal generative AI applications or building ones. So that's like Moody's has one that's public. Many of my customers are developing these products for internal productivity. And then thinking about the external facing applications, right? Like so externally facing chatbots. I'm working on a few of those right now with customers. So you can provide better customer service and accelerate the time to decision for, saying, buying a product, right? So we think about these a lot, and we develop really across the board here, and using our core tools like the AI orchestration, and really the design patterns are very similar, right? You need some source of data, you need some source of business process, and stitching all those together to develop. And really, super important thing, so that your productivity will continue, is doing things responsibly with responsible AI. Making sure that you understand the use cases, and you're complying with all the security and privacy, et cetera, right? This part here is super important. Like, we can't actually develop any applications at Microsoft with customers or otherwise unless we do a responsible AI assessment of the product, which is super important at all levels, because the productivity will stop when the compliance people say you can no longer use this if you sort of color outside of the lines. Responsible AI is really a key pillar of all this. Built-in, sort of jumping around a little bit, sort of built-in copilots, and Microsoft has several of them, and these are sort of examples of where we build in the copilots. And really, one of my biggest inspirations has been GitHub. They have really great blogs that talk about how they look at the telemetry and the usage of their products, right, to increase the productivity of developers, and they pull off a lot of telemetry out of the product. They instrument their product so they know, like, when are you taking a suggestion, right? Like, how many questions are you asking before you get to the right answer? Super important to sort of capture the telemetry of the productivity of your users and maybe your own productivity gains with this product, and they continuously feed back that telemetry to the dev teams, and they publish a lot of this work about how they actually analyze the productivity and use that to continually improve the application, right? So that would sort of feed in when you read those things and sort of get inspiration and use these products. It'll unlock many use cases and unlock many ideas on how you can increase your own productivity and build applications that increase productivity. When you do that, building your own apps, getting to this part, we have a full suite of services. Machine learning, of course, our AI services infrastructure, and of course, Azure OpenAI service. This Azure machine learning service is really one of the core pieces for if you're developing your own applications, which is what I usually do. And it provides a whole suite of tools for doing that, right? So we'll go back for a second. So building, customizing, training, evaluating, and deploying AI. So we have Azure Content Safety, we have evaluations flows, we have the ability to build, if we have time, I'll show you a quick demo, the ability to build these applications very quickly and evaluate them and visually understand the flows and how things work, et cetera. So super cool tool. I'll provide links. How are we doing on time, Marta? We doing okay on time?
Yeah, we have 32 minutes.
Oh, we do? Okay, cool. So with that, we're sort of jumping around orchestration. So we talked about the tooling. The orchestration part, we have LangChain. I'll advertise them. Microsoft's internally developed open source project is called Semantic Kernel, right? There's some key pieces we think about when, depending on what your level is, like if you're developing applications or a user of an applications, one of the key things is the state, right? So the model sort of understanding the state and the history of what's going on. So models and memories is a super key part of this. The also sort of the plugins and affordances that your application can have. So let's say talk to a Bing chat or surfing the internet or talking to internal data. And semantic kernel really orchestrates all of those things, right? So some of the key parts of this are recall and memory. So as you're chatting with the chatbot, right, and you say analyze something, and then you just want to ask a question like please summarize again, or what was I talking about like 5 minutes ago, or whatever you want. You want the sort of your friendly chatbot to continue to have the context of what's going on in the conversation. So that comes with memory, right, or state. Being able to create a plan. So when you ask a question, if you need several steps to accomplish the task, right? So like let's say, and all of these applications have several steps, right? So first, understanding the intent of your question. Next, going off and getting the data or affordances to give additional context, right? So searching Bing Chat or getting internal data. So that comes with the plan. And then those are typically orchestrated through semantic functions or native functions. And that orchestration is like the real magic of these applications, right? And as you think about productivity and the actual application, the sort of key to that is being able to understand how these workflows work, and being able to sort of give the AI chatbots or the GPTs or copilots all the affordances they need to do the job, right? So what we see in terms of AI productivity now are like very long running jobs, right? So say I'm working on some projects that do like loan syndication, and when you do loan syndication, you pick your property, let's say you're doing real estate, and then you need to do, say, some underwriting, and then someone needs to review the underwriting, and then you need to fill out some forms, and then you need to do more underwriting, then humans need to evaluate. And so using semantic kernel or other AI orchestrators to orchestrate human in the loop, that orchestrate data services, orchestrate third-party platforms. Say we need to go look at Salesforce, et cetera, is really key. And that gets back to uh, stitching together the semantic, right? Your existing applications. I'm sorry, your syntactic, your existing applications, and the semantic to bring them all together to create these workflows. Yeah. I'm going to stop for some questions in the chat because I'm just talking. Were there some questions? I see something about seeds and reproducible workflows. Yeah. Can semantic
No,
kernel work with
yes.
Azure, Google Bard, underclock? Yeah. So that's a great thing. Thanks, Joseph, for the question. So one of these things is making these products agnostic. I think I have a slide further down with orchestration. Yeah. Multi-model orchestration. So let me see if I can click on this slide. Yeah, there we go. So just for you, multi-model orchestration. So what this is, and then this was a sort of very early demo I think we had to build earlier in the year. So here what you see is the Whisper model, right? Which is it's open source model, of course. Let's see, Whisper model here, right? And then orchestrated with the Dolly model, right? Orchestrated with Bing Search and GPT-4, and then Dolly again, and then LinkedIn for copilots. So yes, semantic kernel is, and you'll go. I'm sure you're already on the repo right now. When you go find the repo, you'll find lots of notebooks. There's examples of orchestrating with open source models, Google Bard, whatever models you want. It's open source and model agnostic, and bringing those all together. So the models are typically expressed as endpoints, right? And so it's just orchestrating the calling of REST endpoints to get to your whatever your application is. Did that answer your question, Joseph? Okay. What are good tools to build AI agents for clients? Okay, we're getting to that. I can't pronounce your name; it's French, but we're getting to that right now. Thanks for the question. So we talked about prompt flow. Yeah, we talked about prompt flow, and let me see if I have a whole separate thing about prompt flow. So we'll go right to prompt flow. Yeah. So. Part of this iterative design process for prompt design, right? We talked a little bit about this. So this is typically what it looks like. You create your flow, you debug and run, etc. You experiment and evaluate, you optimize and produce, and also how do you monitor this thing when it's in production? So I would encourage you to look at. There's two versions of this. There's one in Azure Machine Learning, right? If you're familiar with the Azure Machine Learning Studio, and what you have here, and I'll show you just the. You end up with a directed graph, right? So all of these things, all of these things in terms of chat bots or copilots or whatever, end up, you have inputs, and then there's some workflow that's happening here, right? And then there's an output, right? So if you look under the covers, pretty much everything looks like an endpoint. The models look like this. You send the model some input prompts, and it sends you back completions, right? And there's some magic that happens in the middle. So what this tool does, and there's a version Visual Studio Code extension for prompt flow. Go find it. I'll send you some links. It looks very much the same. So what you have is really an orchestration. So this one is some sort of language model, and then this one is like a Bing search, and then you see some little icon for Python over here, and then another LLM block here, right? So this is a visualization of these things, and under the hood, it's a Python library. You decorate your functions to create semantic functions, etc. And it's really one of our key tools, and one of the key tools that I use to build these. If we have a second, am I sharing the screen? I'm sharing the screen, yeah. Let me get rid of that. Let me drag it over real quick. Hold on. Just keep the questions coming. I'll show you live here. Okay, here we go. So. Here's one. This is a part of a 311 system for if you live in New York, you call 311 to get information. So what I have over here is my inputs, right? My inputs, and I have some inputs over here. I have a chat history and then a question that you're going to ask. Yeah. Okay. And then I have my output for the whole system. It's just an answer at the end of the day, right? Inputs and outputs, and you'll see that over here. And so my first step here is extract the query from the question. I click on this, and then really up top, and I have a whole thing I do on prompt flow. I'm just whizzing through it for the question. I have a connection here, right? And my connection is GPT 3.5 Turbo, and you see I have my temperature, and there's the API I'm using because I might have several APIs in the connection. Whatever parameters you send in, this, right? And then it'll support function call if you want to do function, and there's some advanced stuff, right? If you want to set the top P and all those other things, right? And then here you'll see a system prompt and an example. This is the system and user is an example coming from the user. This is using prompt templates. So you see here, I have my, if you know Jenga, I'm iterating through the chat history. The chat history is one of the inputs to this guy, right? So I'm iterating through the chat history. I'm putting my questions and my answers, right? So my examples are the previous chat history, and here's my original question, right? And then I get my output, right? So this is a standard system prompt and sort of a history of prompt, right? What goes in as examples of using a conversational API. And so it's just a prompt template. And then what happens is there's output. So my question goes in, I get an output. And then in this one, I do an embedding, right? So I have a connection. Oh, I'm doing embedding. So I embed the question that came out of the first step, right? And then with that embedded question, I'm searching a vector store, right? So simple, I just send my vector and I have my index, etc. And then I come through, that's going to give me some outputs, right? So it shows some outputs here. So I told it to give me 2 outputs, and I get 2 outputs. And here are the outputs, original entity. Let's see. And you'll see the output here, right? There's some text that came through, right? So standard searching a vector store. And then what the augmented chat does, it takes the output, and we're down here right now, right? Augmented chat. It takes the output, and again, a new prompt, right? So we're orchestrating these prompts. And friend, whoever asked, so this deployment, right? I can connect to another connection, and I could use, I don't know if I have anything else in here. So I could use this other one. I could use GPT Turbo or Chat, or I could use Bard or whatever. So I could start with OpenAI model, call my Bard model, call it open source model, whatever you want, because it's just a REST endpoint. Then I have my second set of my second prompt here, right? So my system prompt and my new content, right? So here's the context that came out of the previous step, and it goes on. And then here's some chat history if it's relevant, goes in there, and then my question, right? And then voila, at the end I get the output. So this guy comes out, and what did I ask? I asked it something. You get all this. So I asked it, how do I pay a parking ticket in Brooklyn or Queens rather? And then it comes out after all that, it gives me this answer. Yeah. So this shows orchestration. I only use one model here, but I could orchestrate several models. I'm orchestrating a lookup to data, right? And all the things. And so again, this is prompt flow. And what I'll do is I created this, and super simple. There's lots of hello worlds. I'll show that real quick. And then I can run an evaluation flow. I'm up top here. I can run an evaluation flow against lots of data, right? If I have like a table of, say I developed this and now I want to test it, right? And I have like dozens of examples that my compliance person gave, and I have some expected output. Basically, I give it a table of those things, and it'll run through all of those examples and test them. And then I can evaluate with another language model to see how good my outputs were if they met the objective function, right? So that's a whole other Oprah over there. One thing I want to show you real quick, as you're doing experiment, you see this over here, show variance and generate variance. So I don't have any variance here, but say if I'm testing and my friend who asked for Google Bard, I could have one version that does Google Bard, one version that does OpenAI, another one that does Anthropic, whatever you want. So I can create variants of this experiment, run them all at the same time, and evaluate which one's doing better, right? And also the cool thing, this is new, I can click generate variants, right? And here I have my original one, right? Tell it how many variants I want, right? And this will automatically generate variants for me. So if you're planning on being a prompt engineer, this is an example of maybe why I wouldn't focus 100% on that, because we have the AI actually able to generate variants and then test and optimize itself. Yeah. So cool, right? Okay, cool. So that's it. So what you get here is, if you created the chat flow, I'm going to click on this, and here, let's see how. So when is my compost picked up? this is where it's a live demo picked up. Yeah, hopefully it works. Oh, there was a change in something, so I'll just send anyway. Don't worry about that. They added some extra variables to the vector store. So what's happening here is that you see it's running, like you get the little thing that's running. So it's running and thinking about it, and then at the end you'll get an answer. Here, so it went through. It went to my vector store, got the search, and did all the augmentation, and then yeah, it gave me an answer. Right. So there's some banner, and I can continue. Now I can continue to iterate through this thing. So the cool thing about this is I can deploy this whole application now here. Right. I can deploy it to Azure. If you use the open, not this is open source, but if you use the VS Code one, you can. I do this and I deploy it locally. You end up with a container you can deploy to your Kubernetes. So it's a full development platform for the flows. And again, super important part, the evaluation, variance, doing batch runs, all of these things, right? Super critical for developing this at scale. I'm going to stop and look at the questions real quick.
Yeah, there are two questions. First, more kind of relevant to this is where are the data sources from? Are they external, public, or internal repositories stored on Azure Cloud Storage?
It's agnostic. It doesn't matter where the data are. For this guy here, let's see. For this guy here, the KB lookup is this was a cognitive search, right? Again, it's a REST endpoint, so it could be the data source could be wherever. You could search the internet if you want, right? It's really up to you and what you develop. So for this example, there's a cognitive search someplace that's been indexed with all the data, right? That data preparation step is super important to build your data set. And that's where that data lives. But it's agnostic. I could show you another one, or I point someplace else. Yeah. Let's see. Knowing AI distribution. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to read the question, but you're doing it.
Go for it. Read it.
Knowing that AI will disrupt many industries in the way things operate to become more efficient and productive, is there any AI tool that, other than ChatGPT, that you would recommend as a useful aid for writers?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, for the home team is developing. There's co-pilots, right? The co-pilots for Office. So in short order, I believe we just went general availability with it. So it'll exist in Word, right? You could use. Let's see. This is Edge. I believe this is publicly available. So Bing Enterprise Chat. This is available to the public also. There's a little compose button over here, well hidden feature. So you tell it what you want to write about, pick the tone, informational, paragraph or a summary, whatever you want, a LinkedIn post, the length, and it'll just go. Yeah. So this is available to the public as well. This happens to be an internal enterprise version of it. So I think that whoever asked the question, in the future, probably very near future, if you have an application that does not have an AI assistant that can help you write or help you do whatever job you want, those applications will seem broken in the next year, right? So I have friends at writer.ai. I met someone from Notion.ai, which I use over here. It's available as a progressive web app. You could use, I mean, the Bing search is free. You can try that. It's really going to be up to you on how you prompt these tools and how you get comfortable with these tools and find your favorite, right? And be open to other ones and how you use them. Did that answer your question? Yeah?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. Devon, if you have more questions, feel free to ask. Let's see, what are good? So we got the tools for clients. Oh, I'll give Notion AI. Bing AI has been great. Yeah, the Bing AI is super good. The co-pilots, which I actually don't have many co-pilots. I write a lot of code. If you check out the GitHub Copilot, they really lead the way. And for me, and I think arguably in the industry, they really lead the way in productivity tools for developers, which then inform other tools. So they have Copilot Labs, they have Copilot chat. They have the regular Copilot built in, and really, I think the more of these tools you try and use, you'll get a better sense of what works best with your workflow, right? This one is cool because it's built in. There's a new feature in Bing that I think if you just even highlight things here, if you highlight stuff, let me try to highlight something. If you highlight something here, it gives you the ability to rewrite. Maybe it's not on right now. It gives you, if like basically if you highlight something, it gives you the ability to rewrite it here. Maybe it's off. It comes up when it feels like it. Let's see, close this. Hold on, friends. Is there another question?
We don't have any right now, so I think you can continue with the talk, and then if there are more, I'll surface.
So, but you're going to find these things in the browser, maybe because I'm on like a development page. But when you highlight things like this in the browser, sometimes I get like a rewrite button that comes up, and it's basically the AI is built in to the application. It'll rewrite it for you or discuss it with you, etc. So you're going to see these AI tools embedded in all of your product in short order. So and you can sign up for previews, etc. So okay, what did I do? I clicked on something while we were talking. So this is a chat with Wikipedia because I wanted to show sort of a same example. Someone asked about the data sources. This, if you look, it's very similar. I really took the hello world from the last one I showed for 311, and I did this, right? So there's input, extract query from question. Now this one goes to Wikipedia, uses Wikipedia as a source of data, right, to get the data. So it takes my original question, it goes to Wikipedia. This is Python, right? So it uses some Python to go to Wikipedia and get some results from Wikipedia now, and uses that, processes search results, and then does the chat. Same idea. You could see here, if I work for S&P Market Intelligence, how would I summarize the experience of my resume? And then, so I'm giving it some abstract concepts, right? So if I work for this, how would I write in my resume? I was trying to be funny. I was talking to these folks. How would I summarize my work experience in my resume? And it actually does that. Yeah. So again, nothing super special. It's using all the context I searched for here. I searched up top. Here, I said, tell me about S&P Global. This is my own application, right? And it went to Wikipedia, got a bunch of information about S&P Global. Write an email to my boss who only speaks Spanish about what I just learned about S&P Global in 3 sentences. It does that, right? It summarized the whole thing in 3 sentences. And then I asked for a little blurb in my resume about S&P Global. So again, I'll show you exactly how I developed this if anyone's interested. So I went up here. I went to prompt flow here, right? And hold on. I went to prompt flow here, yeah. And this is the Azure ML Studio. It's a little bit different if you use the open source version. They have some templated ones. Just read the docs. And what I did was I clicked on Chat with Wikipedia. You get basically a model card that tells you what this thing is going to do and the tools it uses, etc. And you click clone, right? And you say, let's see, consensus. Sorry if I spell it wrong. This is demo, right? So demo, and say clone. And then what you get is this. You get now the consensus demo with the hello world, right? All the codes here already for you. And you can go in and modify these things. You can modify the prompts, completions, put in, if you want to add up here, if you want to add a vector store, or someone asked about open source LLM. This is new as of a little while ago, I guess, because it's the first time I'm seeing it. So say if I want to add an open source LLM, right? And someone said, well, we'll give the competition a little juice. So I want to add Bard, right? You give it the API, the whatever the keyword is, the prompt, and now you could use Bard in your. It's right over here, but I can connect Bard up to this chat and use it. Yeah, and then we'll delete Bard so it doesn't mess me up. And then what I do is when I click, so you make whatever changes you want. You could have it point to a different source of truth. You can add here. You can add some vector stores, vector lookups. You can add some Python tools. Discard this. You can add some prompts. You can add more LLMs if you want here, and whatever tools you want. and then simply run this. And yeah, so we'll just run this. So anyway, oh, maybe I didn't set up the connections. Well, with the other things you actually have to set up. You have to set up the connections. Hold on, friends. Are there any questions while we're here? Oh, what you have to do is you set up the connections. So you have to set up the connections, new Azure OpenAI, and then I tell it I want GPT-4 to run here. I didn't do that. And then there's probably one other one I set up the connections for. I just want to show you how quick it is to do this. It's like a cooking show. So we do that, and then we'll click save. Yeah, we'll save all this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, save. Okay, it's probably saved. Okay, and we'll try again. Try this. Okay. Oh, it should be run. Okay, so now it's run. It's happening. Okay, so it's running, and now it's going to Wikipedia and asking the next question. But like literally with doing the clone, setting up my connections to my endpoints, right? Here I'm using ChatGPT or friends with Bard, whatever. And so what's the difference between model and previous between this model and the previous neural network? So it answered the question, right? I've just developed my own chat copilot that talks to Wikipedia that I can now deploy, I can test, I can modify, etc. Yeah. Okay, Ken, I'm gonna read a question. Yeah, friend. Yeah, try Notion AI, Devon. Also, Writer's a good one. I know May at Writer. You could. There's tons of no limit of tools. The copilots are also pretty amazing when those are generally available. Can the output be an image or animation rather than text? Yes, Joseph. So I don't have that example here, but if you wanted to call the Dolly model right with your text, or I think I just showed something here. I think I just showed something over here. I don't know where my PowerPoint stuff went. I think I just showed something. Yeah, I showed something over here where we orchestrated the Dolly model and a bunch of other models together. So yeah, you can call any model you want. What you're going to do is here it is. So here we call the whisper model, right? So the whisper model, what this is speech to text, right? So you can talk to this thing, right? And I think OpenAI showed we have it as well, where you can talk to our Bing chat. If you go get the mobile version of Bing, it has Bing chat, and you can talk to it, and you can send it images and do all kinds of cool stuff. I'd encourage you to try that. So to answer your question, this does speech to text, right? And then the Dolly model does whatever it does over here, some sort of entity extraction, right? And then it uses the Dolly model to generate an image. I believe this does like a LinkedIn post of whatever the folks talked about, right? So the idea behind this, there was a podcast, and they wanted to summarize the podcast and then do a LinkedIn post for the podcast, right? So it listened to the whole podcast. It extracted the guest's name out of the podcast, right? The whisper model provided that. Then it did some search for information about the guest, wrote a blurb for social media, generated an image for the LinkedIn post, and then called in affordance for LinkedIn over here, and actually did the post. You can see this as a whole workflow orchestration. So we went from speech to not only text, but also to image, and dropped it in LinkedIn. So take a look at this. It's pretty cool.
Another question that actually is quite valuable, and we have 5 minutes left, so I might want to make sure that we cover is how can I know that the output content, nothing against legal obligations of each country, or whatever the data source from the public or private?
Yeah, so our friends at OpenAI just announced a Content Shield, which they will help with like this sort of what do they call it, the copyright. U.S. there's copyright. Microsoft also has a similar. We'll have to get the link if someone reminds me to send the link for that. Microsoft has a similar program where we guarantee some level of copyright protection against the information. So let's see. You know,
How'd you
nothing.
even do that? So didn't have time to catch up on the keynote and the announcements. So how do you even make sure that it is free of copyrights, given that like the LLM is such a large database and you don't really know, you can't pinpoint where the source of your data came from or what
Well,
exactly is used.
so that's a good question. That's sort of in line with like sort of the presentation, right? Like the idea is you're going to have a source of truth for the data, right? In your retrieval system. So there'll be a source of truth for the data. The model has whatever the model has in its we call it the latent space, right? It's brain basically, and really think about that as the ability to reason. So the model has the ability to reason. Whatever context we send to the model, the data that we're sending to the model, we have control over it, right? So we retrieve that from someplace, right? We retrieve that from some data source. If we retrieve the data from some public source, right? So we query the data, some sort of search index. So we know where the data is coming from that we retrieve. So we've retrieved from a public source. Then we will cite that. If you're asking it to generate like a custom image, then the images that we use as reference images should not be those. Maybe let's forget about image. We'll talk about text, right? So if the source of the text is a public or a copyrighted source, then we would not use that source in our content. Yeah.
Right.
So you sort of like make sure that you don't use any of those copyrighted sources in the content to generate that content. And there's guarantees around that. It's very similar to our content filtering, where we monitor for abuse and those things. So it's not the same exact system, but it's sort of the same idea. I'll get the slide for this. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, so just two more questions. Clemens was asking, how does this process change with the creation of GPTs from Dev Day? I think he was talking about the previous process that you were showing, not this particular
Yeah.
question.
So what's the exact question?
Clemens, do you want to just ask it yourself? It'll be easier. I'll allow you to talk. There we go.
Hey, yeah, great presentation so far. Thank you so much. So I was just wondering because there's, within AutoGen, there's a lot of talk about like AI swarms, meaning you kind of have multiple AI agents working together. So if I wanted to, in the same process, create, one AI agent that's focused on doing copywriting, another one that helps me with brainstorming, and then they work together back and forth, right? I've looked at chat dev. It's really fascinating to build a company with these AI agents. How does the process of a solution architect kind of change as well as you're building these out? Because you're kind of building the agent and then the agents are working together to solve the problem rather than kind of informing each process for looking at sources, reflecting on them, and then going through kind of a standard waterfall workflow.
Okay, so what's the question? What changes or?
Yeah. So in your mind, like in your mind as a solution architect, where do you think it goes? Are you designing more AI GPTs? Like, do you think that the creation of this like GPT builder and GPT store just simplifies what you're doing inside of this Azure Machine Learning Studio versus kind of the bigger picture is like, okay, well, is the Machine Learning Studio a phase to a bigger thing where now you're kind of building the studio, then builds the agents separately to then orchestrate between agents? Does that
Yeah,
make sense as a question?
so that's a great question. So it depends where. Thanks, Clemens. It depends where you're at in your development cycle, right? Like the GPTs, and I just thanks for asking about AutoGen as part of my presentation. Um, I do have I do quite a bit of development with AutoGen. It's like proof of concepts, and it's interesting because the OpenAI assistants and the GPTs look mysteriously like the AutoGens. Almost, if you read the documentation, it's interestingly similar. Um, and really you're kind of asking maybe a little bit more existential question, like where is this whole thing going? Like, will I just be able to ask my AI to do the entire thing for me? Probably yes. I mean, you saw generate variants inside of prompt flow, right? So prompt engineering would be maybe not a thing in the future, right? Maybe a lot of these things will orchestrating the infrastructure, or all the things like those, they will probably not be a thing in the future, right? So you're sort of asking maybe a question about like the nature of work in the future. Where is the divide? If you can do your product, you do whatever you need to do, Clemens, with the GPTs and the copilots and plugins, then great. Then you do it. You don't spin up Azure OpenAI Studio to build one. When you are building a thing, right, a product and developing one, that's when if you're building your own assistant, or when you're building the GPTs like behind the scenes, you would use a product like a AI Studio. Now, let's say if you have the GPT and you want to go to, you're a developer and you want to go to production, you absolutely need a way to test and monitor what those GPTs are doing for time, right? Azure OpenAI Studio, we didn't get into it, has in preview now a system for actually monitoring these LLM apps as they're in production, right? So you can course correct and actually adjust, continue the development, the experimentation and validation of what's going on, right? I might have to stop. I actually have a presentation I'm supposed
to. I wanted to say, I think we'll just need to have another session next month or something, because this was really interesting.
Thank we sort of jumped around. We sort of jumped around a lot. I got to apologize. I have a customer waiting for me on another call.
Ron, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll see you at the next session.
All right, thanks, friends. Send me questions, and thanks for entertaining me for a little bit.
Thank you.